Well, now Priscilla Presley's son is being dragged into her legal fight with two former business partners. Navarone Garcia has just been sued for allegedly not paying for the work they allegedly did for him, and they claim he messed up their deals with Priscilla. There are more allegations that we need to break down right now. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, so we have been covering this constantly developing legal battle surrounding Priscilla Presley, who's being sued by two former business associates. And now those same people have just sued her son, Navarone Garcia. Now, before we even get into that, I have to give you the backstory about what we're talking here. So Brigitte Cruz, Kevin Fialco, the plaintiffs here, the people suing, they are apparent entrepreneurs in the Elvis memorabilia world, and they claim that they helped Priscilla Presley, again, Elvis's ex, manage and profit from her name, her image, her likeness. It's called NIL, but they claim they were ultimately duped, that they were deceived and cut out of future business opportunities because of Priscilla. They accuse her of fraud, they accuse her of breach of contract, intentional interference, conversion, and they are seeking over $50 million in damages. Now, the heart of the lawsuit is that Priscilla allegedly misrepresented her rights to use the Presley name and brand, and she allegedly told them that she owned, all of the rights to her name, image, and likeness, when in fact they claim she had already given those rights up, sold those rights. And as a result, they claim, they argue, they invested significant time and money based on false pretenses. And in an amended lawsuit, and we covered this a lot here already on Sidebar, they refer to Priscilla as a calculated sociopath, a master of deception, a pit viper. The suit alleges that she has this long alleged pattern of exploiting those closest to her for gain. Elvis, her daughter Lisa Marie, there's a big mention of her granddaughter Riley Keough. And I'm going to elaborate on that for a second because Cruz and Fialco claim, for example, that during Priscilla's 1973 divorce from Elvis, Priscilla had waived all rights to inherit anything from his estate. Now, apparently, she initially received cash payments, car support, but then they allege that she manipulated Elvis into getting more money, later giving her millions, millions, and millions. Lawsuit says Priscilla's thirst for power and money was insatiable. The complaint alleges that she put a $494,000 lien on Graceland just months before Elvis's death, and they claim, quote, she exerted undue pressure on Elvis, pushing him to his death. Yeah, that's the allegation. Oh, and by the way, when it comes to Lisa Marie Presley, the lawsuit, I mean, this is pretty strong too. They say she played a role in her own daughter's death. That Lisa Marie, in her final days, it claims that at the 2023 Golden Globes, Lisa had confided in Priscilla about serious health concerns. They claim that Priscilla basically ignored those, and within days, Lisa Marie was dead. The allegation being that Priscilla pulled the plug on her own daughter. The suit accuses Priscilla of making a power grab at the hospital, controlling the narrative around her daughter's death, allegedly saying afterward, I'm the queen, I'm in charge of Graceland. Now, when it comes to the business disputes with respect to Cruz and Fialco, they allege that Priscilla defrauded them in business by falsely claiming that the NIL rights she no longer owned, that she had said one thing, did another, that she allegedly withdrew money from a shared business account without permission, that she failed to disclose that she was making deals regarding her name, image, and likeness, that she didn't tell Cruz and Fialco. They mention NBC's Christmas at Graceland, that she signed unauthorized contracts, we're talking breach of contract, and they allege that her actions caused substantial financial damage, and they are now demanding compensatory and punitive damages. Now we got to talk about this new lawsuit, right, against her son. So they have just sued Navarone Garcia, and here is what it says. I'm going to read it verbatim. Quote, after Priscilla Presley approached plaintiffs Cruz and Fialco to invest in her to save her from financial ruin, plaintiffs Cruz and Fialco created various entities to be used to grow Presley's brand. Plaintiffs Cruz and Fialco invested 7 figures into this endeavor for Presley's benefit, handling numerous tasks for Presley, including by resolving various threats of litigation, resolving pending litigation, and negotiating various deals for Presley, which defendant Garcia, again her son, was well aware of. Additionally, plaintiffs were tasked with taking care of numerous issues for defendant Garcia. Specifically, plaintiffs spent countless hours negotiating a settlement for defendant Garcia, where he was ultimately paid a seven-figure amount from the estate of his late half-sister, Lisa Marie Presley. Further, plaintiffs spent extensive hours overseeing various business issues for defendant Garcia's band, Them Guns. To date, even though defendant Garcia was enriched by plaintiff's services, defendant Garcia has failed to compensate plaintiffs for the value of their services. Further, on information and belief, defendant Garcia convinced Presley to cut off communication with plaintiffs Cruz and Fialco and has consistently interfered with the businesses created to exploit Presley's name, image, and likeness. Okay, so now before I get into what they are suing him for, I want to bring back on, here on Sidebar, Law&Crime's general counsel, our lawyer, Elizabeth Vulaj. Elizabeth, so good to see you. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for having me on again.
Why do this now? Why sue him? Why sue him now after they've already filed this amended complaint against Priscilla?
Yeah, so I think there are two reasons. So some of the things that they're alleging in this complaint against her son, Navarone Garcia, is that they performed certain tasks for him, you know, resolving business disputes with his band. They even say that they helped negotiate a settlement between him and his half-sister, Lisa Marie, when she passed away, involving the estate. So one of the things that they're claiming is they were never paid for that work. And as you mentioned, that they're alleging that he interfered with the contractual obligations Priscilla had by basically telling Priscilla, you shouldn't do business with these people. That's what they're alleging. And then therefore sort of interfering with her contract. So I think they are suing him to try to pursue these claims, and they're saying they weren't paid, that they should be compensated. And then also, I think what they might be trying to do is sort of keep adding sort of further threads into their overall theme of the lawsuit against Priscilla Presley. I think that's why you also see references to the issues that, you know, she had with Elvis in the 1970s, issues with her daughter. It's sort of adding to this. I always say in a complaint, there's the actual claims, but then the themes. What are the themes that the plaintiff's attorneys are trying to get at with the complaint? And I think that's one of the themes, is that, you know, what they're trying to portray Priscilla Presley as is somebody who, you know, gets out of contracts, that has advantageous relationships, that maybe doesn't honor her obligations, and kind of looping in her son here, I think sort of helps to further add to that in their eyes.
Now, I got to say something. With my job, I'm pretty much exhausted all the time. And when I'm on the road, I mean, I just was at CrimeCon out in Denver. I'm sometimes, you know, homesick. And when life or work is stressful, that you're feeling burnt out, don't you just want to go to that one safe place, that one comforting place, the bed, right? Let's talk about Cozy Earth. So Cozy Earth has these bamboo sheets that are temperature regulating, which means I wouldn't be waking up sweating or freezing. I would just be comfortable all night long. And let me tell you, the bubble cuddle blanket, that is a total game changer. It is ridiculously soft. It has this textured bubble design that looks amazing draped over the couch or bed. It's the kind of blanket that everybody in the house is going to be fighting over. And here's the thing. Once you feel that difference, you're going to understand why Cozy Earth stands out. They give you a 100-night sleep trial. So if you don't love them, you just send it right back. Plus, there's a 10-year warranty, because honestly, comfort like this, shouldn't it really last the long haul, right? So head over to CozyEarth.com, use my code Law&Crime for 40% off. And if you see that post-purchase survey, let them know where you heard about Cozy Earth right here, because your bed, it shouldn't be just where you sleep. It should be your happy place, and Cozy Earth makes that happen. Is the goal to put more pressure on her, maybe to settle? Now we're going after your son. And you know, they're throwing, it's making the headlines every day. It's like, you know, first it's what happened with allegedly with Lisa Marie, then Elvis, now your son. Is that a goal here, to put more pressure on her?
I'm sure it could be, because, you know, I think it's one thing to file a litigation against her. She's the one that had the business relationships with these plaintiffs. And the plaintiffs are claiming, well, we also did work for your son. So it's a little bit tough there. But I think that's definitely a tactic of saying, you know, we're not only filing this litigation against you, we're now looping in your family.
And it's interesting that they're doing this here, because as far as I can see, it's a separate lawsuit. It's not like they added him as a defendant. Why is the goal to join all these cases together into one massive trial?
It could possibly be. I think it's a little bit tough to do that because there are separate claims that they're making between her and between her son. It's similar claims, right? Because what they're alleging against Priscilla Presley is that we did all this work for you, we weren't compensated. But it's tough because they're saying that Navarone, her son, interfered with the relationships that Priscilla had with these plaintiffs. So it's sort of it's overall, the overall themes are obviously similar, but it's separate actions. So I think it might be tough to join it later on. But I think you were right when you were getting at the pressure to settle. And what we also saw in the amended complaint that they filed against Priscilla was bringing in letters allegedly written by her granddaughter to Priscilla, and kind of like really involving a lot of members of her family in it.
I had the opportunity to interview Cruz and Fialco's lawyer on a previous Sidebar. You can go check it out. And I asked basically, where's the evidence of all this with respect to Lisa Marie and Elvis? And, it is the initial stages of this litigation. He seemed to suggest that there are people who will step forward to corroborate these accounts. This was a very bare bones set of allegations against Mr. Garcia. Did they need to include more? I still didn't get a sense of what exactly that relationship was like, what the services they provided, what his understanding. How do they know, for example, that he interfered with his mom's business dealings? I mean, they didn't present text messages. They're saying upon information and belief, right, as the litigation moves forward. But how? That's a serious allegation to make.
It is. And you're right, the complaint was pretty brief. There was only 3 causes of action. They can always, of course, amend it and add more information. That's what they did with the lawsuit against Priscilla. In a complaint, it's the plaintiff sort of had to have that advantage in that they don't necessarily have to provide evidence of every single cause of action. That's what the rest of the litigation is for. And judges always say, you have to abide by sort of the 4 corners of the complaint. But it was very bare bones. You're correct. And the issue, one of the claims that they make is interference with contractual relations. So how can they prove? One of the things they have to prove is that he knew about all of these contracts that Priscilla Presley had with these plaintiffs. He intended to interfere. And where's the proof in it? Is it just phone calls? But obviously, we always say the more written proof, the better. Emails, texts, things like that. So maybe they might have it later.
I want to go through those causes of action. Before I do, though, the fact that they have sued him now, do you think this is also a fight in the public? The more it gets media attention, the more now they're accusing her son and Priscilla. Is that a tactic too? Again, maybe it goes back to the idea of trying to settle this, but is that a tactic too?
Right, it could be. And that's one of the things that was in the amended complaint was they had mentioned Elvis, and they're insinuating she put so much pressure on Elvis that partially even contributed to his death. That I was really surprised to hear about because that was, almost 50 years ago. And what does that really have to do with this claim right now? But I think adding in those details about Elvis, about Lisa Marie, and now involving her son, I think it's putting more pressure, and then it also doesn't paint a flattering light. Whether the allegations are true or not, we don't know. But I think it's putting the pressure on in the public eye. And I'm sure anyone in her position would want to correct the narrative if they feel that that's incorrect, which is also, funnily enough, we received news that she's going to be coming out with a memoir. And in the excerpt that was shared today, she had talked about when Lisa Marie Presley was admitted to the hospital. So it's almost sort of seeing, there's lots of reasons why people put out memoirs, but, possible wanting to correct the narrative maybe. I think that's definitely a part of it.
And just for our audience to be clear, in a civil lawsuit, couldn't they call Priscilla and Navarone as witnesses and grill them about all this?
Correct, yes. So in a criminal trial, you have the right to, even if the charges are being filed against you, to not testify. Civil trial, you can't really get out of that. So if it does end up going that further and it doesn't get dismissed or go through summary judgment, they could absolutely do that.
I want to go through some of the causes of action here in Garcia's count. So the first one is called common count goods and services rendered. And basically the allegation from Cruz and Fialco is that Garcia owed them money for services that they performed for him, that he requested, negotiating a complex settlement related to Lisa Marie, the estate, managing the business affairs for his band, and they claim they did the work as he wanted, but they haven't been paid, they haven't been compensated for the reasonable value of their services. This is an interesting cause of action. It's kind of general, right? What exactly are we talking about here?
Yeah, it's really phrased in sort of an interesting way. I've seen that a lot in New York, but really the way that it's phrased in New York is basically unpaid wages, that you did all this work, you weren't compensated for it. I really wonder, if they had any sort of contract with her son. I'm guessing probably not, because they probably would have included breach of contract in the actions
Right?
so
Yeah.
far.
So it's an oral
So
contract, like an
it
understanding?
might be an oral contract. It might be sort of an informal relationship of, oh, we're doing all this work for your mother, we can help you out. And they claim we resolved business disputes with his band, that they even negotiated a settlement with the estate of Lisa Marie for him, which I was really surprised by. So it's phrased a little bit interestingly, but I think it might be because they might not have had a formal working relationship.
Couldn't he just come back and say, you were doing work for my mom. If she said, hey, take care of something for my son, why am I on the hook for this?
Right, yeah.
Right?
And also Priscilla Presley, they're saying that they had over, 20 written agreements with her. So we don't know what was in those agreements yet. It could be, maybe that they had an obligation to perform certain duties for her son and they would be compensated in a different way for that. Or, that was one of the thoughts I had, because when I read the complaint, I'm like, oh, they didn't include breach of contract yet. I wonder why. So I think that might be why.
They didn't. What they also included was his alleged, like you said, interference with Priscilla's contract. So there's the second claim is intentional interference with contractual relations. And Cruz and Fialco, they allege that Garcia intentionally interfered with their contractual relationship with his mom, Priscilla Presley, who they say was bound by these agreements to fulfill certain obligations. And they claim that Garcia knew about these agreements, allegedly persuaded Priscilla to break these agreements, to break ties with them, and this caused breach of those obligations. And as a result, they claim they suffered financial harm, that Priscilla continued to profit from her name, image, and likeness without paying them. They allege that Garcia acted willfully, maliciously. They are seeking punitive damages. We'll talk a little bit more about damages, but first of all, how are they going to suggest that? How are they going to prove that? Text messages, getting him on the stand. How can they say he's the cause for breaking up the relationship? And by the way, if he had a good reason, He's like, I don't trust these two. Isn't that a defense?
Right. So the first part is how can they prove that? And then one of the things that they have to prove is that, again, he knew about all of these contractual obligations and he intended to interfere with them. So that's always tough to prove. Obviously, the more written proof you have, text message, emails, documents, communications possibly between Priscilla and her son, where he's saying, you've got to try to get out of these deals. It's tough, though, because we don't know how much knowledge does her son have about, the extent of his mother's business dealings. Did he know that they had written agreements in place or not? So I think that's going to be a big burden. Obviously getting him to testify to that is going to be hard because he's probably going to say the opposite. So I think written communication and documents are going to be really, really key here. And certainly. I mean, I think that's one of the defenses that could come up is even if he were to say, I wanted her to get out of this, but there's a very good reason why. And, I think that also stems from the lawsuit that Priscilla filed, because this all sort of started when she filed a lawsuit last year against the plaintiffs, basically saying the same thing, that, she alleged that they committed fraud, that, they sort of coerced her into signing all of these dealings. She wanted to get out of it. So I think that could add to it.
And the third claim against him is intentional interference with prospective economic relations. So they allege that Garcia intentionally interfered with their prospective economic relationship with his mom, Priscilla Presley, that it was likely to benefit them financially, that he knew about this relationship, allegedly caused his mom to cut ties with them, and it disrupted this relationship. It harmed their economic interests. And they claim Garcia, again, acted deliberately and maliciously. So very similar to the last claim, right?
Mm-hmm. Very similar, right. So the first part of it is that they're alleging like they weren't compensated for all these acts that they had included. And then the last two claims are sort of very overlapping in that they're getting at the overall theme of him allegedly interfering and intentionally interfering with the obligations that his mother had, with these, what they're saying is over 20 written agreements that she had with them, and then also the various LLCs that they had set up for her.
And they say he acted willfully, maliciously, oppressively, and despicably. I mean, really going after him here. Okay. Let's talk about what they could potentially recover. There's economic and non-economic damages. So there's exemplary and punitive damages. There are reasonable attorney's fees pursuant to California law, costs and expenses of the suit, prejudgment interest at the maximum legal rate, and other and further relief as the court may deem just and proper. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, so there's the aspect of monetary damages, right? So all the things that they say they're entitled to in terms of financial compensation. So the unpaid wages, damages, compensatory damages and financial damages are awarded sort of as a deterrent. So, alleged defendants who are found liable for wrongdoing are deterred from doing this again. So that's where all the damages that are intended to compensate them for the harm that they say or loss that they say they incurred, and sort of almost like punitive damages as well of the court, again, trying to deter defendants from acting this way. But then you also have what's called injunctive relief. So it's basically, if the court were to find that it's proper to provide injunctive relief, meaning, stopping defendants from committing certain actions again, maybe barring the two parties from having business deals with each other, barring them from even speaking with one another, any sort of relief that's non-monetary. I don't know what that would be because you don't really see injunctive relief in these kinds of cases, but we'll have to wait and see.
What do you think's going to happen next? What it may likely happen next?
So I definitely think that Priscilla Presley and her legal team, her attorney has spoken out about this and called it despicable and just, because there's a lot of really heavy, intense allegations in the amended complaint specifically where they loop in all the family members of the Presley family. So I think she's definitely going to move forward either with a motion to dismiss likely, and if that doesn't go through, probably a motion for summary judgment. And
explain that that's just a way to try to get the case thrown out.
Sure, right. So a motion to dismiss is a defendant is able to file that pretty much out of the gate, just trying to get the case tossed as opposed to filing an answer and moving further in litigation. Later on, once discovery happens, so once the parties exchange documents, once people have been deposed, then the parties have a chance to file a motion for summary judgment. And what that's basically saying is the case should be thrown out because, all this evidence is presented. We don't need to go to trial.
There's nothing for a jury to decide.
Right,
even if you take everything as true, there's no claim here.
Right, and I think she's going to probably pursue that, one, to obviously try to get rid of the case, but then two, this isn't something that probably she or any members of the Presley family want to play out in public. They don't want videotape depositions, more evidence coming out, anything, evidence either way, right? So I think a lot of people in the public eye that are sued want to be able to have this resolved without going to trial, obviously to save costs and things like that, but also the publicity aspect of it as well.
Yeah. All right. We'll see what happens next. I know you've been following it. As soon as we talked that we were going to cover this, I can't tell if it was our team or you were like, I want to talk about this, but I'm so happy to have you on.
It's interesting. My mom is a very big Elvis fan, so we grew up listening to his music and everything, so I'm excited to be here.
I know. It is disturbing to see these allegations and see what's happening, but it's another big civil case that is making its way in the media, and we're so happy to have Elizabeth on. And
thank you so
fan
much.
favorite. Everybody loves hearing from you, so thank you so much.
You.
Good seeing you. And that is all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us, and as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me on Instagram or X. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll see you next time.